and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. And in this special edition of our program, we will talk about Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli's participation in the 8th edition of the Future Investment Initiative Conference, which is taking place currently in Riyadh with the participation of many financiers. The foreign investors flocked to flagship Saudi Economic Conference for Saudi Arabia's 8th edition of the Kingdom's Future Investment Initiative. And foreign investors flocked to flagship Saudi Economic Conference for Saudi Arabia's 8th edition of the Kingdom's Future Investment Initiative, FII. The Kingdom is taking clear steps to scale back spending as oil prices fall well below its fiscal break-even figure, and it continues with crude production cuts agreed upon by OPEC+. More in the coming report.
Minister Mohammed bin Abdullah Al Jadaan revealed a $1 billion development initiative for Africa, $5 billion for startups from the Saudi Development Fund over the next 10 years, $10 billion in financing from the Saudi Import-Export Bank over the next decade, and private sector investment of $25 billion over the next 10 years. A group of regional state-backed funders called the Arab Coordination Group aims to lend $50 billion by 2030. Al Jadaan was speaking at an investment forum in Riyadh, where global finance leaders, tech entrepreneurs and politicians are meeting this week in the shadow of regional conflict between Iran and the Israelis and a U.S. election on November 5 that could return former President Donald Trump to power. He cited debt relief offered to Chad, Ghana, Zambia and Ethiopia when Saudi Arabia had the rotating presidency of the G20 economic bloc. He said, quote, "We are a leading investor in Africa. We have invested more than $7 billion to date, and 100% of that is renewables," end quote. According to the UN's Conference on Trade and Development, Africa's debt levels have surged 183% since 2010, a rate that is 4 times higher than its growth rate in gross domestic product terms. During the 2020 G20 summit, Saudi Arabia called for the suspension of African debt payments. At the inaugural Saudi Arabia-Africa summit in November 2023, Riyadh continued to press for resolving debt issues in Africa.
Now we are joined over the phone by Mr. Abdellatif Wahba. He is a political analyst. Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Abdellatif, can you hear me? Mr. Abdellatif. So, how do you weigh the timing of the conference amid global challenges, Mr. Abdellatif? And it seems that there is a technical problem, and we move on to our reports. And Egypt's ambassador to Nigeria met President of the Economic Community of West African State, ECOWAS, to discuss expanding cooperation between Egypt and the entity. Details follow.
Egypt and ECOWAS discussed expanding cooperation between them. This was made in a meeting between Ambassador to Nigeria, Mohammed Fuad, with President of the Economic Community of West African State, ECOWAS, Omar Touré. The meeting discussed threats in West Africa and Sahel, especially those pertinent to terrorist groups. On that front, Ambassador Fuad expressed Egypt's readiness to support ECOWAS's action plan on combating terrorism, and that is by training personnel taking part in that mission. He said that is in addition to confronting extremist ideologies. The talks also tapped on the possibility that Cairo contributes to institutional capacity building in the realm of trade exchange among ECOWAS countries. This is in addition to enhancing agricultural production and water management.
Welcome back. And as we said earlier, that foreign investors flock to flagship Saudi Economic Conference for Saudi Arabia's 8th edition of the Kingdom's Future Investment Initiative, FII, with the expected participation of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli. Now we are joined over the phone by Mr. Abdellatif Wahba. He is a journalist. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, sir, how do you weigh the timing of the Saudi Economic Conference amid different global challenges?
Yeah, of course, it's, as you know, that Saudi Arabia and the Middle East is witnessing just now a critical time, and also the increasing level or the level of the escalations in the area. So you have to take a pre-action to face this current situation, especially in how to help your economy and how to avert the repercussions of the current situations in the area. And as you know that Saudi Arabia held its annual meeting, the future or international summit, investment futures in Saudi Arabia. So they are trying to get or to attract foreign direct investment. But on the other hand, as you know that Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli is participating in this summit. It is a chance at the same time to offer your opportunities and investments chances in Egypt, and to attract more or foreign direct investment to Egypt in this critical time. So, as you know that Madbouli, before going, or the cabinet anyway, before participating in this international summit, Egypt took many important steps and procedures to facilitate the investment in Egypt. They increased the incentives for the foreign direct investment, and also they plan to modernize and improve the tax of the company on the companies and the investors and so on. This is of course one of the main attractions to the foreign investors. At the same time, as you know that Egypt declared that they put procedures and steps for the foreign direct investments in Egypt without any sudden change or decision. So you will come to Egypt to invest according to investment law contained with, for example, for 20 years or 15 years and so on. So you will not see the random decrease as in the last decades and so on.
Yes, Mr. Abdellatif, how important is it for Saudi Arabia to diversify the economy of the world's largest crude exporter away from oil?
As you know that the Gulf Council countries or states, they are trying to diversify their economy and their economic activities not to depend upon one traditional output or product like gas and oil and so on. But they are now trying to depend upon the other factors like construction, like reclamations of land, like new cities and new communities, and also to increase the number of agri-industries and so on.
Yes, Mr. Abdellatif, also how is this year's event different from the past versions?
Yeah, of course. During the critical times and during the war or territorial conflict and so on, many investors, international investors, and many institutions and corporations are seeking the safe markets to work in. And at the same time, as you know, that many foreign companies are trying just now to increase their already investment working in some Arab countries, in Egypt, and so on. This is a chance. How to attract them? This is the main element for the investment future summit.
Yes, Mr. Abdellatif, also Saudi Arabia's finance minister said the kingdom is to invest $41 billion in Africa over the next decade. How do you see the number and Saudi Arabia's interest in the African continent?
Yeah, as you know that even if this foreign investment from Egypt or from the Gulf states, they are seeking for chances that can be useful for their economy, especially in African countries and agriculture and industries, and also in infrastructures and so on. This is if they invested, for example, in Africa, it is not only a useful for the African countries, but at the same time to the Gulf states.
So also, Mr. Abdellatif, how do you read the kingdom's interest also in cooperating with Egypt in different economic files and the volume of Saudi investments in Egypt?
Yeah, of course, as you know that Egypt and Saudi Arabia has a mutual and bilateral relations, historical relations. And we know exactly that Saudi Arabia supported the Egyptian economy during the current or the last decade, and at the same time they are seeking to invest or to increase their investments here in Egypt, especially after Egypt declared many chances for the foreign direct investments for Saudi Arabia. We have a 5 plots on the Red Sea. They can join and they can invest in it.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Abdellatif, Wahba, journalist. Thank you for being with us. And back to our reports. And Morocco's king welcomed French President Emmanuel Macron to Morocco Monday, kicking off a state visit with a series of bilateral agreements, including major investments in renewable energy and transportation. Details follow.
Well, Macron's trip to Morocco, his first in 6 years, comes as immigrants, including North Africans, face continued scrutiny in France and while France reassesses its role in its former colonies throughout Africa. Morocco has historically been a key economic and security partner. However, relations between the two countries have often been fragile. Among the objectives of Macron's visit, the Élysée Palace said, is to rebuild the exceptional partnership that links the two countries. French and Moroccan flags on Monday flew throughout the capital, where crowds lined the streets to watch the motorcade containing Macron, his wife and members of Morocco's royal family drive to one of their palaces. Macron and Mohammed V, who used a cane to walk, later oversaw a ceremonial signing of 22 agreements to facilitate future investments, as well as cultural and scientific partnerships. The investments announced include a €10 billion contract to expand Morocco's high-speed rail line southward to Marrakesh, which the country hopes to complete before it holds events for the FIFA World Cup in 2030. They also include the projects to develop green hydrogen, wind farms, and water projects, which Morocco has identified to help insulate the country from the effects of climate change.
And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's special edition of our program, Africa Today. Thank you for watching.